A few moments ago, I had geared up to go outside and go for a jog because for the last 2.5 hours, I had been napping. Every time I come back from work, I just drop dead, and other times, even if I'm off from work, I still have that fatigue lingering. So I have been trying to implement some kind of an exercise routine. But if you guys are following the news in any way pertaining to weather, if you don't live in the East Coast, or if you live in the East Coast, you would know for sure. But we have been getting a ton of storms, so that is definitely not aiding the cause. But I wanted to get that out of the way because I was frustrated that my plans had been messed up. So, anyway, I guess I should take an opportunity to go ahead and stream and then figure out what to do a little later. So, I don't know if you guys are aware, but there is this fool called Tucker Carlson who says a bunch of dumb things on TV. He is a host in Fox News, which, I mean, I'm not a fan of mainstream media as my news source. I honestly cannot tell you which news sources I trust because it seems to be something incidental. I read something, and if I can read something that is objective, then I am more likely to trust it. But if I find that it's a source of information that tends to have an inclination, a bias, and I can detect that right away, that's it. I like to not even continue reading, which is very difficult to do because a lot of the things that you find out news about, it's not stuff that you can do legwork yourself to confirm if it's true or not. But at least if multiple sources that you have at least the slightest bit of trust toward are reporting the same thing, that means that it's more than likely true. But anybody can lie, and unfortunately, that's just the truth about humans. Humans can lie, especially if you happen to be talented at something like acting. With acting can come deception, because with acting, you are practicing to make someone believe that you are role playing. But anyway, I just wanted to give you that little bit of a preamble so that you can sort of get a feel for what the situation is. Well, if you guys are following politics, the Democratic candidate Joe Biden has finally elected his vice presidential running mate. And it's a lady by the name of, shoot, now I forgot what's the proper way to say it. Kamala. But now I forget her last name because, to be fair, I've never really heard of her much. I've seen her trending a few times. I think her last name is Harris, but I cannot say that I follow her closely, given that she's not really local. Like, I know my local candidates a little better than the more national ones, and members of Congress, I cannot say that I keep up with them much either. I know some names because of the stuff that they say that makes them trend, like Ted Cruz and that Rubio guy. But outside of that, there's another handful of folks who I could probably mention, but I cannot tell you what kinds of ideas they had, what kinds of policies they've had. But if you tell me what their party is, I can have an educated guess, but it's not like I can claim to sit here and be an encyclopedia with information about these people. I sincerely do not know them as much as I feel I should. But there was this host, Tucker Carlson, in Fox News, who was being corrected by one guest he had on his show, um, that made him aware, this is a journalist that's very famous and influential, that he was mispronouncing Miss, what was her name again? Kamala? name, or wait, that is the thing. He was saying Kamala, but her real pronunciation is Kamala. And when I first heard the story, I thought of it as, well, unfortunately, it is very easy depending on what your influence is when it comes to your language to mispronounce things from time to time. The California accent is severely different from the Texas accent, in the same manner that those two are severely different from the New York accent. And there's also the Florida accent, and there's also the Deep South accent, which personally reminds me of a more watered down version of the Texas accent, if you know what I mean. But even in places like that, although we live in the same nation, if you see something with three syllables, there's multiple choices, especially with names that have, I guess, relatives, but it's still not the same name. And to give you an example, there's the name Tamara. Some people say Tamara. Some people say Tamara. Most of the folks I have met who have that name go by Tamara. But I have met one person who went by Tamara. And I said, you know what? That makes sense because my name just so happens to be very similar to that. And it has that kind of a sound. But what I like to do when I meet someone, especially if I were to officially have a show that's going to be tuned in by millions of people, I will brief myself on names. That is what a normal, integral, responsible person does. Hey, I'm sorry, your name is on the odd side for me. How do you say it? I will never assume that I know what your name is. And there are names that, even as regular as they are, I like to ask. Because again, I have I guess by this land's standards, I have a peculiar name and it can be difficult. So what I like to do is if the person dares to guess and they get it wrong, I correct them. And after that, they get it. That is an example of someone who is responsible and respectful. But Tucker Carlson decided to act very defensive. And he was like, whatever her name is, I don't care what her name is. That really doesn't look good on him because this is a individual in a professional setting. And I feel like he is perpetuating something like, well, if you don't have a name that's easy and common, then you should be willing to be subjected to this bullying, which I think is very wrong. I think that as a journalist or host or someone in a professional setting, you need to do your homework and make sure that you get something right, that you are aware of how to say things and what your information is, and make sure that your information is up to date. And even if, say, a few moments ago, I tripped because I have to think about this, I had seen the name Kamala, but I had never really had it pronounced. So my first impression was to say it like that, Kamala. That is simply what my accent, I guess, leads me to believe. That is my first reaction. But then when I saw this trending, I thought, oh my goodness, what if it's one of those instances in which someone just says Kamala? That could have been another possibility, given that there is another syllable, but it turns out that it's Kamala. And I immediately associated it with the name Pamela. You could also say Pamela, but most of us don't say that because that is a relatively common name. And I guess you might, if you're really, really, really out there, like an outsider, foreign, English is not your first language, I can see how that can trip you a little bit because there's different accents, different dialects, different ways of perceiving syllables. And if you've ever studied a foreign language, There are languages out there that have accent marks for a reason, like Spanish. They put accent marks over the letters where the strongest syllable has the sound, like the strongest sound corresponds to the syllable where the vowel has that accent mark, something like that. So you can rest assured that if you were reading in Spanish from what I was taught in school, what you see is what you can count on the word being pronounced as. Whereas English, given that it's borrowed words from so many languages, it's very easy for even native speakers to mess it up because I mess up things all the time, and other folks around me mess up things all the time. And I ask them, hey, why are we so behind at this? Why are we so bad at this language, especially as common and universal as it is? But it just happens. We also have different cultures, different influences, and all of that meets in this place. And you just cannot have your mind closed to what you grew up influenced by or surrounded by. Because I guarantee you that this guy, given that he's a middle aged man, at least from what I can see, I haven't looked up his age, he is definitely behind on some things. The state of our country was significantly different when this man was growing up. What for us, like younger people, is normal now, for this guy at his time, it would have been shocking. But as someone who goes out there and collects information and spends a lot of time talking to other people, I would hope that he becomes more in tuned to this stuff, if that's even a word. Like, become more conscious, aware, and just take that into your own hands. Become responsible about that. You cannot be a respectable figure and get really defensive by your host very kindly correcting you, and as opposed to saying, oh my goodness, I have been mispronouncing this person's name wrong this whole time. My sincerest apology, but thank you for making me aware. I honestly spend more time reading it more, and I had never really heard it being pronounced. Like in my case, this is if it were me, I would react that way. I would first take ownership, apologize, and maybe perhaps explain why I was pronouncing it that way. Be like, to be fair, like it happened to me today. I had never heard that lady's name being pronounced until it became a trend. So I am grateful for this trend because all this time in my mind, when I had seen that name trending, make up your mind. Are you going to be dark or are you going to be bright? Anyway, it's kind of storming out there, so maybe the lights will go out. But in my mind, I was just like Tucker. I kept saying Kamala. To me, her name was Kamala. But now that I have learned that it's actually Kamala, I will do my best to remember that that's how it's pronounced. Even though I know for a fact I'm never going to meet this lady, I want to respect it because I want for my name to be respected. And trust me, it does not get respected very often. But at least most of the people I teach my name to are actually normal human beings. And they usually say, I'm sorry, but that's why I asked, how do you pronounce it? Or I dared to give it a shot because I don't know, I enjoy the thrill of getting something wrong or getting something right. But this host's attitude, especially on national television, is just really unprofessional, and that's really what upset me because this is someone who we're supposed to be able to look up to. We are being influenced by this person, we're receiving information from this person, and if we see that kind of conduct, some people out there are going to be influenced into believing that behaving that way is absolutely correct, which it isn't. But But anyway, I personally feel like this Carlson guy is in the wrong. You should know how to pronounce people's names, because it, let's say some people's names, if you were to know someone who goes, or actually their name is Maurice, if you call them Maurice, do you think they're going to immediately respond to you? No, they are not, because that's not what they're used to being called. Now, if you're friends with that person, if you're really close to them and they understand that you like to play around, you like to joke, you like to troll, stuff like that, they may know what you're doing. They may know that you're just saying Mo and then rice, because rice is inside that name. But on a regular basis, if this person were walking down the street and that's what they heard, they might think that it's someone sitting on a table saying, I would like more rice, please. Because you know that some people out there have that kind of accent, where they say, give me some mo, or something like that, you know? But same thing with, Ollie, who occasionally is here in the comment section. His name is Oliver. If I were to call him Oliver, do you think he's going to respond to me? Fucking no. The only reason he might is because since we have been friends for a long time, he probably figures that I'm trolling him and he recognizes my voice. So I am sure that he would be able to piece it together. But if we were absolute strangers and he does not respond to me calling out to his name, I cannot be upset that he's not responding to his name when I'm saying it incorrectly. Your name is part of your identity. Therefore, you have to respect it. Even if you don't like it, even if you disagree with the way it's spelled or pronounced because of your personal influences, your origin, where you come from, where you went to school, who taught you your language, whatever it is, if this person tells you that their name is something, you call them that something. You do not try to make it up. And it's just boiled down to respect. Just be respectful of people. It doesn't matter how weird they are, how crazy sounding their name is. You can respectfully ask for a nickname, request a nickname. Hey, do you happen to go by a nickname? If the person says no, then just be mature, suck it up, and practice their name. Or maybe you could try suggesting a nickname to them if you genuinely have difficulties with the name. Because I imagine that if I were to go to a foreign country and I see a 16-letter name or 20-letter name, I would definitely be intimidated by it. And I would just very kindly request to the person, if given my difficulties, because we don't share that common language, we could come up and agree with a name that I can designate for this person to facilitate the process for me. But I would let them know that it's out of respect. It's not that I'm not trying to get their name right, but hey, some people, especially when you have cultural differences, you cannot be good at everything. And names is definitely something that I'm not good at, especially if they're foreign. And I can understand that. I can respect that. What I cannot respect, understand, tolerate, and get behind is the people who really try to attack attack the person's identity, or say, oh, your name is too difficult, your name is too foreign or weird, so therefore it's okay for me to have this attitude toward it because it's not what is common around here, or it's not what we're used to. Just be professional. If someone corrects you, own it. And someone could also lie to you, but I don't see how this person who was correcting him would really win anything by lying to Tucker about what her name is supposed to be pronounced as. But Joe Biden was live today announcing, I guess he went somewhere to announce the his vice presidential pick formally, and he went with Kamala. I said, "Oh, now that this other guy taught me how the name is pronounced by correcting this fool, now I actually can verify that this person was not lying." Joe Biden said Kamala in the same manner that this guy was correcting Tucker with that name. So, yeah, you guys, that's pretty much it. When it comes to this topic, I really think that the way you pronounce someone's name matters. And it just boils down to the fact that it's basic respect and basic courtesy. But if you don't have that, then honestly, you're just an asshole of a human being. There's just no reason why you cannot take ownership of that. And to me, this Tucker guy doesn't have the greatest resume in my head either, because I have known him. Anytime he trends, is because he's usually saying something wrong. It's usually he's bullying someone, and that's honestly what I know him for. I know him for his drama, and that is one of the reasons why I said until Fox News can have more respectable people portraying their news, then I cannot see myself being a viewer. But that's just my personal opinion. I'm not telling you do not watch Fox News because I disagree with the host. If that's what suits you and what you prefer, you go right ahead. I couldn't stop you even if I wanted to. But just be aware of those things. Do not let these people get a pass on that stuff, because that's why all this animosity in our country keeps lasting. And it's ridiculous. We need to be better. We should be a whole lot better about those things. Okay, let me catch up with the comments. JP says hello. Hello. And then, you know, I don't remember if you ever told me what your username is supposed to sound like. Come to think of it. Come to think of it. So I'm just going to say the last three that I see, which is SIS, sis, just because it sounds like sister. But I'm pretty sure that you're a guy, so I don't feel like you might be too fond of that. It ain't. My name is it like that Brazilian city? Like they have like Sao Paulo or something? Is it Solo? Saulo? Solo? And people used to call me Sauron, like the guy from Lord of the Rings. Unfortunately, I have yet to see any of the Lord of the Rings films, so I cannot say that I know how to say Sauron, but let's see. Sola, Sola. I want to say Sola because it only has two syllables. But if I'm butchering your name, I sincerely apologize. It really sucks that I cannot push some kind of a button, like a walkie talkie, to allow you to speak. Maybe you can push a button and then I can hear you say it. I'm the only person who is audible in a stream setting like this. So, but if you try to break it up for me with the letters, like say uh, SAW dash LO, if that's the way it's pronounced, then I can definitely do that. But you will need to coach me, because even if it were a popular name, I can still butcher it. It was kind of fun. Hello, hello, Garuda. Whole world calls Turkish President Erdogan, 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 with G like in a gun, but his name is pronounced Erdogan. G is silent. We cannot know it all. Exactly. I do not expect for us to be really good at everything and dominate everything, because I'm telling you, I take great pride in my spelling skills. But when it comes to names, I cannot claim much expertise. And even some words, if I have never seen them before, I more than likely might spell it correctly if you tell me that it has a foreign origin, if it doesn't sound like it already. Let's see, what would be an example? Soirée. That is French for, it's either evening or afternoon, but you know that in French, OI has a wa sound. So you wouldn't know that that's not soiree or soiree or soiree, sorry. It could be anything in your mind. I'm not going to judge you for that. But at least if you know the origin of it, and you know the basics, more than likely you'll be able to piece something together. And I also think that soiree has like an accent mark in one of the e's. It might be soire with an accent. Is it the graph or the accent ague? I don't remember. I know that I feel like it's pointing in an ascending kind of dash, diagonal dash. And then there's the, I forgot what that stupid C with the squiggly line is, and you guys told me in the comment section a couple of months ago. Fuck it, I'm not gonna remember. And then there's that accent mark that looks like a little triangle. There's the accent graph, accent aigu, and the accent. Fuck, I cannot remember any of my French. But I should definitely whip out my AMSCO notes. AMSCO, if you want to learn French, I swear by AMSCO. I want to say that is the best tool out there. It worked perfectly for me. And this is coming from someone who has like a learning disability with languages. I have never been very good at grasping them. But when it comes to French, I had an amazing experience with Dr. Bloom's edition of French. So, man, if only I could remember the name of the volumes or something. Just look up if you're interested. Of course, I'm not sponsored in any way, but if you're interested, look for AMSCO, AMSCO, by Dr. Bloom. Was his name Bloom or Gloom? I just hate that I cannot ever remember people's names. Like author names. I am the worst with names, I promise you. And even customers whose names I've been trying to learn at work, I fucking forget them. If there's someone whose name is John, I may end up calling them Joe. And I always started off with, hey, I'm going to do my best to remember your name. Was it Joe? Nah, it was John. I promise you I'll be better next time. It's just the way I am. You know, I cannot be good at everything. I can retain some information, but some information I just cannot. And some people, I can remember their faces in so much detail, bright as day. I can remember their face, like I can remember lyrics to my favorite music. But if you ask me for their name, I just cannot tell you what their name was. It's just a flaw in my character, you know? But I always try to respect people's names. At the end of the day, it is your responsibility. That's just what you're supposed to do. No excuses. And there was no way that I could have figured that the G in Turkish is actually silent. I'm not sure if it's silent across the board or just in that situation. But I know that French, I don't think it's like Spanish where the H is silent in Spanish. I think in French it has the same sound as in English. But my listening and speaking skills in the little bit of French classes that I took, I honestly only took level one, which you really don't do much speaking there. It's an introductory course primarily on how to read it. And if you learn how to read something, more than likely you can begin to associate what the sound is going to be. I remember learning the alphabet, but if I were to attempt to rehearse it right now, I will mess it up because it's been 11ish, 12ish years since I took that class, and after I exited that room, I never went back to study that stuff. But yeah, you guys, that's ultimately what I think. I think you need to respect people's names once they tell you what it's pronounced. If you are in a public setting, it is your responsibility to become informed about those things, especially if it's a name that you know or you suspect can actually be pronounced differently. If you have any doubt or if the slightest possibility exists, which pretty much, if you have a name that's more than two syllables, I feel like you should consult someone and make sure that it's right. But if you're coming on fucking national television, you have to own that shit. There's no excuse because it's disrespectful. It's disrespectful to your own company that you represent and work for. It's disrespectful for the person, of course, who owns that name. And I, as a viewer, will be influenced by that. Oh, look at this person. This is a person who's very disrespectful. If I were on his show, he would feel like it's okay to mistreat me on the basis of my name simply because he cannot tolerate something that looks different from whatever routine he's accustomed to. You know, these people need to be challenged and held accountable, and we should not allow for that mess to happen. But anyway, that's just my opinion. Very humble opinion. All right, guys, that's pretty much it from me. I don't have much else to add. Thanks for joining and for sharing your thoughts or teaching me something like G's in Turkish can actually be silent. I had no idea about that. But yeah, just be nice to people, respect people's names, and do not take it into your own hands to give people nicknames unless they are approved by the person, because I would not be cool with certain nicknames. Even if you have seen me giving myself nicknames such as Zam, I refer to my own self as Zam in documents and stuff, and even via text. Just because I say that doesn't automatically authorize you to say it. But then again, I use my whatever nicknames I give to myself or the family has given me, it will stay with the family or it will stay with my circle of friends and colleagues, but it really won't branch out from that. But here in the channel, ever since I started entitling some of my videos with the word Zam in it or the name Zam in it, I don't mind. It's just shorthand for my name, but at that point, if I introduced it to the channel, it's because I wouldn't mind you guys using it. I have indirectly authorized you guys to use it. But if one of you guys would have randomly thrown it at me, I would have been like, you know what? I like Zam. I never thought about it. Or I might have been like, I don't dig it. So if you in written form feel like that helps you, that's fine. But if we ever were to interact in person, refrain from that. But I would let you know. But I don't have a reason to let you know since I was the one to initiate such a thing. All right, guys. Well, thanks so much for tuning in, and I will see you soon. Be nice to people.